alright, my mama, any way you do. Mama, she done told me, Papa done told me too. Son, that girl you're fooling with ain't no good for you. Well, that's alright. That's alright, my mama, any way you do. Then you won't be bothered with me hanging on the door. Well, that's alright. Well, that's alright. That's alright, my mama, any way you do. Alright, Mike. That's alright. That's alright, my mama, any way you do. Well, that's alright, my mama, any way you do. Hi, I'm Lee Rucker, and I want to do a tape today on Rockabilly slap bass playing. I played slap bass in a band called the Stray Cats for about 15 years, and now I'm working with a new band called Lee Rocker's Big Blue. Slap bass is a technique that goes way back really to classical music to a degree, but it was made famous in the 50s by Bill Black and Willie Dixon, and a lot of the blues and rockabilly players really kind of brought it to the forefront. It's kind of it's a technique that in my mind, and how I do it, is half kind of percussion drums and half of it is really note work. So it's a real physical kind of thing. And I'll give a quick demonstration now of the most simple way of doing it, which is just a quarter note. And I'll just do a basic blues progression in A on this. So the first thing really that I was doing there is taking the quarter notes, and this is in a two feel, going back and forth between the A and the E, is to pull the string up, and the most important thing there is to have your bass set up in a way that the action, the level of the string above the neck, that you can grip your hand around like this and get it underneath the strings. If your action is set up too low, you won't be able to get that grip on it and have it snap back how it should. So you need to have, I'd say at least between quarter and a half an inch. It's a little harder on the left hand, but you get a much better, bigger sound overall on the instrument. So what I was just doing there is quarter notes, which would be just pulling them up and letting the string do the slap work. I'll just do another simple line with just that technique now. That's really the most basic form of doing it. And there I'm just going through a kind of a blues progression, going from an A chord for 2 bars, then a D chord, back to an A chord, an E, a D, and back to an A. I think one of the things as being a bass player that you really need to know is where you're coming from and where you're going to in terms of chords and what notes are in those chords to play a good, interesting bass line. These are based off of just a basic major chord, a triad. It's like an A, C sharp, E. It's be A, C sharp, E. Now to a D chord. And I would say the best way to really start to get this down would be to take it real slow and just work on open strings for the first, until you've got that part down. So I'll just do that for a second. So you're basically letting the string do all the work on this one. Beyond that, I'll do a demonstration of how to do, it's a quarter note, so just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, where the slap is with the note. To go past that, which we use in a lot of songs, would be to pull it up and then hit across the flat part of the hand, the middle knuckle. And that would be, so you're grabbing, pulling out, and then slapping back onto the string, which is more of an eighth note technique. So it's like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's really the most basic of the techniques that we're going to be going into, and that's the quarter note kind of walking bass line, where the string is actually doing the slap, as opposed to what I'm going to demonstrate next with an eighth note, where you're taking your hand and actually hitting across the strings with your center knuckle, right across here. Probably develop a big fat callus right there. Let me go into the eighth note feel. I'll do 2 or 3 bars of a quarter note one time again, and then I'll follow that up with the eighth note thing. You'll hear the difference. Slow that thing down there for a minute so you can see what I'm doing here with the right hand, and that is pull, slap. So it's a 1 and, just like an eighth note. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And I would practice that really very slow at first. I remember when I was first playing, sitting down in my garage trying to get this down and just taking it a real slow tempo, just going. And I wouldn't even worry about left hand at the moment. I would just work on the right hand part of it. It's a real hypnotic kind of groove thing, and you just got to loosen up with it and let your arm do the motion and just kind of feel it. Yeah, I would start practicing that eighth note slap thing and all of this stuff we're going to be going over today real slowly at first, and not worry too much about the left hand and what notes you're playing. So probably the best bet is to start with open strings here on the left. I'll start with an open A and just do that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and just do that until you can't stand it anymore, just to get that kind of rhythm going with the right hand. I'll speed this up a little bit and show you what it'll sound like ultimately if you've worked on it for a while. You know, I just want to go back over what I said earlier. I mean, one of the most important things to get this technique down is to have the instrument set up in a way where your strings are high enough to do it. You try it on something too low, you'll never get your hands underneath it to pull up like this. So make sure you've got a good height of at least 1/4 of an inch, whatever you need to get your fingers underneath the strings. From there, I would say I want to do a bass line, again in A, and I'm going to incorporate a few different feels. One of them is a dotted kind of feel, like a shuffle. A lot of the blues bands play. And this is kind of what this one sounds like. The difference between that and the 8th note one is you're waiting a fraction before you do the slap. A straight 8th note feel for more of the kind of Chuck Berry rock and roll type songs is that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and this is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that dotted feel is really what you'd play against a swing beat. If your drummer's doing that, something on like a song I think most people know, Kansas City. I'll do a little demonstration on that. And I'm going to play this in the key of C. Get off of the open strings for a minute. No, no, Kansas City, here I come. They got some crazy little women there, and I'm gonna get me one. So that is the slap technique right there for a shuffle beat or a swing kind of beat that you'd normally play. And I think the last time or two when I went around the chord progression, I started to do a different new thing, which is to add some triplet feel things to it. And that's something that I do a lot in my playing. It's not that widely used really, but it's to slip back and forth between that dotted swing feel and a triplet kind of thing, especially on a turnaround, which is when the progression finishes in the last 2 bars. And let me demonstrate that. That would be... Here I'm just playing a basic C7 arpeggio, which is going C, E, G, A, B flat, A, G, E, C, and I'm going C, E, G, A, triplet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, triplet, 2, 3, 4, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, triplet, 2, 3, 4. So triplet is really how you would do it on bass. Would be the first note is where you pull up and get the note. It's followed by 2 just percussive sounds, 2 slaps. So I'll just do that on just a bottom C here. Triplet, triplet. So you're pulling up just like you would on the 8th note or the dotted feel, but the rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3. Like a waltz. waltz kind of feel almost. So I'd say that'd be a good thing to do would be try to actually practice that for a good 10 or 15 minutes straight and just try to get into that hypnotic kind of feel with it. I'll do that here for a minute. And really, part of the creative part of this, once you've got those 4 techniques of rockabilly slap bass down, the quarter note, 8th note, and the dotted feel, which is that swing, shuffle kind of feel, and the triplet, really the goal should really be to not be so locked into the one type of slap, would be to try to break them up a little bit, like I showed on that the last 2 times around, I think, on the Kansas City groove. Let me play that one more time for you. So that's really mixing it up a lot. And that thing that kind of sounds like a double time, that's just doing like 4 or so triplets back to back behind each other to do that. Triplet, 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 triplet. And that works real well on the 4th beat of each measure. Or, I mean, it'll fit anywhere, but generally with this kind of music, that's where it lays well in terms of vocals and what everyone else might be playing. So that's a good place to try to put it, to go 1, 2, 3, triplet, 1, 2, 3. So that is that's really the 4 basic slap techniques, and trying to work that, all of them, or some of them, whatever might work for you, or the song, into the basic bass part. I think one of the mistakes a lot of people use, and not use, but they play when playing this kind of music, is to not break things up well enough rhythmically to keep it as a straight ahead thing where they're always doing an 8th note feel, or they're always doing a dotted feel. And there's a lot of room in rockabilly music and blues music for the bass player to kind of stretch out normally and try to do some different things. Having a good drummer to work with helps a lot, but you can work off each other. But it's definitely something to be real free with and have fun with, and to take these techniques and try to insert them in different places and see what happens. Maybe be a train wreck, maybe it won't. But I think that's really the art of it in terms of the right hand. So I'm going to go through something now and just mix them up and play a couple of different bass lines through a progression in D, a 1-4-5 blues progression in D. And I'll try to do a little bit of each in here. like an example. I just had to mix up these bass lines. So really the thing to do is just to make sure to practice real slowly and get these kind of feels sort of ingrained in, in your mix of things that you play. I want to talk a little bit about left-hand technique and just kind of music theory and the bass in general, since we've been over the right-handed slap things and the 4 different slap techniques that we were talking about earlier. I think a problem a lot of bass players have that are coming up and starting to play now is a little bit of a lack of knowledge in terms of chords. It's really it's essential like you work with your guitar player or keyboard, whoever the chord instrument in the band is, and understand kind of basic arpeggios. I'm going to go over a few of those. An arpeggio it's a chord like you play on a guitar, but it's broken up so you're playing it one note at a time on bass. And it's really essential to be able to do this so you don't have any of these little train wrecks or anything happening with the sound of the band. I'm going to do these in C just because it's kind of a little clearer to do it there. So the first thing I'm just going to show you without slapping, just regular walking kind of technique, is a major 7 arpeggio. And that would be a C, E, G, B, C, B, G, E, C. And arpeggios in general, I think, really should be practiced a lot. Since that is a major 7 there. I'll do that one more time for you. C, E, G, B, C, B, G, E, C. You don't find that chord particularly that much in straight-ahead rockabilly music, but there might be a call for it depending on how you're kind of turning things and twisting it around a little bit, which for me is always like a goal in playing roots music, is to try to do something a little different with it without really losing the, what's true and honest about it. So there's a major 7. You probably will not use it that much, but it's definitely something to be aware of and know. The next one I'm going to show you is a C7, which any 7 chord, wherever you play it, it relates to. But this is the pattern for it. Would be C, E, G, B flat, C, B flat, G, E, C. And I would just practice these continually. Next would be a C6, which is kind of that boogie-woogie line that you probably hear this sound a lot. Kind of the most traditional, simple bass line, but it's really what fits best for a lot of things. That is C, E, G, A, C, A, G, E, C. And that you hear in everything. And then you've got to know also what a basic minor triad would be, which is an arpeggio. Triad is 3 notes, and that would be, for a C minor, that would be C. Instead of going to the E, you're going to flatten that, which means take it down a half step. So C, E flat, G. And the same thing there, you can go up to your G string, and I'll do a C minor 7. C, E flat, G, B flat, C, B flat, G, E flat, C. Best way to practice this for me, to basically get that kind of sound into your ear, would be to practice it chromatically, and that means by the half step. That would be practicing here from the C, on a C7 chord would be going C, E, G, B flat, C, B flat, G, E, C. And to do that chromatically would mean, here's your C note, move it up to a C sharp, and do that same pattern. I would do that at least 4 times, if not more. Then move to a D, up a half step. an E flat. And up to an E. Back down to the E flat. Back to the D. D flat. And back to the C. It's a great thing to practice just in terms of muscle and left hand. A real hard thing to do, and to try to mix those up between doing what I just showed you with the 7th. Do that 4 times. 3, 4, and then go to the 6th chord. And I would practice that all up and down the neck of the bass, starting on the G string and starting on the C string for now. And if you can manage to do that for half an hour, you're definitely getting some strong hands and starting to get the whole feel of this kind of playing down. Let me demonstrate a line now using some of these kind of arpeggios. I mean, all of the stuff that I'm doing is based on this, between the right hand slap stuff and arpeggios in the left hand. I mean, a lot of pretty much all traditional kinds of American roots music, blues and rockabilly and country music, as far as the bass goes, is centered around that. The trick with it is to try to break things up, just like with the slap, how you'd break things up between single quarter note slaps and eighth notes and triplets, to take these arpeggios and not always approach them the same way, not always go I'll show you, I'll do like a couple of lines, walking lines, and what I mean by breaking up with that would be not always starting on a C, if you're playing a C6 chord, not always starting on the C note, which it normally works. You've got to judge it by the song and what else is going on musically, but I'll just kind of play around with the one beat of each bar, not always starting on the first note of the arpeggio. That's a straight 6 arpeggio. Now I'm going to F. What I did there was to break things up was on the first chord to go through the 6, do that again just like we were practicing. Now you're going to an F chord, an F6, but instead of going to that F, I'm playing the A to start on. So you're playing an A against what your guitar player or your keyboard player is playing as an F chord. That's a third is what that's called. So I'll just show that to you quickly. And here we go now. There we're going to a G chord, and I'm playing a B against the G. These things will work, but you definitely have to use your ears, like you always should be doing, to judge that if it's the right call to make just musically. I'm going to play around with a couple of different lines and a couple of ways of breaking things up now. What I did towards the last half of that was when we're going from the C chord to the F chord, I was going through the C6 the first time to the A against the F, A, F, A, C, A, F, A, C, as opposed to the standard line would be going. I'm just kind of turning that around and going. Any of these notes, like in a C6, for example, that C, E, G, A, C, can be played in any order. You could start on the E, which is the third of the chord, or you could start on the G, which is the fifth, or you could even start on the A, which is a 6. But you definitely have to be careful with this stuff. A lot of times playing around with other notes in the chords are going to work a lot better for you behind either a guitar solo or something less regimented than, a verse or a chorus of a song. So I'm going to mess around with this a little bit more. All right. And, in there was another technique or a musical thing that I use a lot, which is to start taking notes not in the chord or the arpeggio. And another thing to be careful with, but it will work, is to play blue notes. And that would be here on a C6, you're going up C, E, G, A, C. I'm going up a higher octave then, here to an E flat, up top. This chord doesn't have an E flat in it, it's got an E. And we're playing an E flat up top. By itself it won't work, and it might sound very strange. If you're just touching on the note to go to another chord, to take a walking line and move to another chord, it will work, and it will definitely work behind pretty much any solo. So people are usually basing their solos around arpeggios and blue notes. So I'm going to play that for a minute. So you can hear how that works, and it flows real nicely if you can work that into your playing. And it's that chromatic thing again, that half-step kind of feel. So that should give you a couple of different suggestions and directions to sort of go to keep these kind of bass lines interesting and not just rely on the standard kind of arpeggio sound. It's something you definitely got to digest and understand what's going on with the rest of the song and the rest of the musicians. But this is a way to kind of twist and turn things and not get stuck in a rut, which, I mean, we all do. But, the goal is to be solid and confident in your playing and what the bass should be doing in the song, but to maybe modernize it or do something that's unique and something that's your own, and that's sort of techniques that I've been using over the last 15 years. Yeah, I wanted to go back and talk about what I was saying earlier about blue notes, and I was playing an example on a C6 chord for that C, E, G, A, C, and then going up here to the E flat. The E flat will work, and that's a blue note. You've got to be real careful, though, to keep that an octave higher, where I'm playing it up here. If you tried it an octave lower, you'd have all kinds of low-end rumble. That definitely is something you don't want. So when you're really going to take a note not in the chord, for whatever reason, you want to keep it higher in the register. It just works better. The low end tends to rumble, and it's not too musical, so I'd be real careful with that one. Right now, I wanted to do a song that I had written with my band, Big Blue, and I'll probably get the band in a little while to do it full-blown, but right now I'm just going to play the bass parts to that, and I'm going to go back and forth on a slow blues between doing some simple slap stuff and some more straight-ahead walking bass playing. A thing called Big Blue Train. Outside the window, baby, I can see it's gonna rain. Look outside the window, baby, I can see it's gonna rain. No, they're coming to get me, baby, and take me back on that big blue train. Yeah, 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 yeah. I wish the rain would come down and wash all my sins away. I wish the rain would come down and wash all my sins away. There's not enough rain in the clouds, and the big blue train will let me stay. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm on the big blue train. It's raining so much hard now, baby. Raining so much hard I can't see. Raining so much hard now, baby. It's raining so much hard I can't see. Better walk down to the station, 'cause the big blue train is waiting on me. So that's Big Blue Train, and I was kind of mixing that up in the bass solo there, going back and forth between more traditional sort of slippery, more or less pseudo-jazz stuff, and rockabilly percussion playing. One thing with an upright bass, which is real nice, is it's a fairly forgiving instrument in a sense, like a fretless bass. Since it's not fretted, you got a lot of freedom to slide in and out of things, and can kind of cover your trail when you miss a spot, which I missed a couple in there. But that's what it's about, playing roots music. In my mind, it's not about perfection or having things exactly on. It's really about the spirit and the feeling and the honesty you put into it. So that's an example of how to mix things up on a slow blues song with bass playing. I want to talk about the setup I have on this bass. This is my studio bass, and it's set up real different from the ones I use live, and I'll explain why that's that way. But for me, in the studio, you want to get as natural a sound as you can. Live, what I'm trying to do is just recreate the sound you get off of a decent instrument. Here we've got a nice German Neumann microphone placed, an inch or two, normally, it depends on the instrument, higher than the F-hole and a few inches out. You should really just move your ear back and forth when you're in the studio and use that as the judge of where it should be. And then I've got a pickup here running through a small Ampeg amp. And it's a very natural sound. I mean, obviously the microphone is picking up what is coming out of the instrument. One of the questions I get asked a lot is really about sound, and I think a problem a lot of the players have is they're using gut strings on the bass. They're a lot easier on the right hand and the left as well. It's just an easier string to play, but you don't get the note as well as you get the slap, so you get a very hollow type of sound. These are Danish strings. They're called Jagers. I know there's an American-made string, I think, called Dr. Tomastic, but you want to try to find steel core strings. So these are solid steel strings, and you get much more of the note sound, and they're a lot more responsive when you're to vibratos and bending. It's just a truer sound, and by going with the gut strings, you get a little bit more ease of play, but not nearly the quality of sound you get on this. Another reason why I'd say the better bet is the steel strings is if you're playing in a band that has any kind of real volume to it, not just a quiet kind of thing, you'll need to run steel strings, because most of the pickups are magnetic, and they won't pick up a nylon or what they call a gut string. What I do live is I've got an electric bass pickup placed right here on a block of wood, and that's like a standard precision pickup. I like the EMG active pickups, and you put that on a block of wood here, and they're split pickups, which mean one pickup picks up the E and the A string on a block like this, and then the other one picks up the D and G string, and you've got to balance them in terms of volume. That'll get a big fat sort of electric bass, round, nice sound. And I've got a contact pickup that I mount over here, right where the fingerboard starts to hang over the instrument. And I'm not sure who makes these still. You can find them, maybe you find them for acoustic guitars, they're usually kind of a rectangle flat thing, and I tape it into there, and that gets a lot of the slap sound for you. And I would run them through two different channels of an amplifier. One of them getting a great note sound, can kind of really rumble a room, and the other one getting a much more trebly percussion sound. So you run that through two different channels, and you can blend that. If you've got the equipment or where you're playing does, you should take a DI, a direct box, off of both of those pickups and have it put through the PA. If you try to use a setup like my studio setup, here live, what you're going to get is more than likely is a lot of feedback, and it's not too pleasant, and it's not a good sound at all. So I would definitely try to deal with the steel strings and deal with the calluses and the blood and gore and all the rest of that comes along, as you can see. But have some fun with it. I mean, the bass, slap bass and upright bass is a real physical thing. Try to stay loose with it and get into that kind of hypnotic groove, physical thing. It's not a stiff instrument to stand there and like you're in an orchestra or something. A lot of it has to do with the motion of the arm on the right-hand side and the left, too. I'm just going to mess around right now and play a couple of different bass lines, and you can see what I mean. That's sort of, what we've been going over today and just trying to mix things up and keep it interesting and not fall into these kind of ruts that we all do. All right, now we're going to have some fun. I want to introduce Big Blue to all of you. That's Hank Deluxe over here on drums and Mr. Mike Eldred on guitar. And we're going to do a couple of songs for you. Here's one called The Hucklebuck. All right. I want to thank you for watching this tape, and hopefully you got something out of this and can kind of understand what rockabilly slap bass playing is more about. I think the most important elements out of this whole thing, which are like specifically upright bass, would be the different slap techniques, that quarter note, eighth note, swing kind of feel, and the triplets. Anything involving the left hand, you definitely can apply to electric bass as well, in terms of working with arpeggios and knowing your chords and where you're going to and where you're coming from. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. I had a great time doing this, and if you got any questions or comments or anything, you definitely can write to Homespun Tapes up here in Woodstock, New York, and I definitely appreciate that. Thank you. You want me to stay? I've gotta go. My bags are packed. The sun takes low. Why don't you go on and find another man? You read the stars, they shine your way. Well, I see the light, the dark you'll stay. Why don't you go on and find another man? Baby, don't you understand? Baby, been a changing pain. Why don't you find another man? Won't need a lover under your spell. Why don't you go on and find another man? You use your hexes, your voodoo too. Won't need protection when I pray from you. Why don't you go on and find another man? Baby, don't you understand? Baby, been a changing pain. Why don't you find another man? An angel bill won't need a lover under your spell. Why don't you go on and find another man? Why don't you go on and find another man? Why don't you go on and find another man?